Changes are coming. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Strong in the Saddle. I'm your host, Katrina. I've had this podcast, I think, since 2018. I can never remember whether I started it in 2018 or 2019. It's been a while though. I think I have over 250 episodes on the feed, and it's changed a lot throughout those years, however long it's been. It's kind of neat to scroll back through the feed and look at when I very first started. I was super nervous to record, for one, and I was in a completely different spot in my life. I only had Junior, and I was definitely very much still in the barrel racing world. And now I have Diesel as well. I do not barrel race. We went from reining to showing, and totally different place. And I love that I have this collection of episodes to kind of go back on. And it's not like I've talked about myself and my own horses the entire time. I've definitely done more educational videos and episodes along the way as well. There was a period of time where I did the cool down series, where after every ride I would record a podcast and just kind of go through what I did during my ride and just kind of the reflections based on that ride. And we've come a long way since we initially started the podcast. And it wasn't even called Strong in the Saddle back then. When I first started, it was called A Cowgirl and Her Horse. I totally forgot about that. We have changed, we've evolved, we have come a long way. So I'm a big fan of Jordan Peterson, and I recently decided to purchase his self-authoring program. And part of that includes a future authoring program, which basically gets you to think about who you want to be, where you want to be, what you want to do going forward, and then setting very real, concrete goals with steps to get there. So it's this in-depth goal setting process. And I went through that, and I basically looked at it from the big goal categories. So career, relationships, health and fitness, all those big buckets. And part of that was, one of my goals was definitely to pursue or to continue to work on being a content creator, specifically YouTube. And I was thinking about it, and I was nowhere during that entire process did the podcast make an appearance. When I was thinking about who do I want Katrina to be 5-10 years from now, successful podcaster was not in there at all. It did not cross my mind. The YouTube thing did, podcasting did not. And as I said, part of that whole process was kind of getting down to the nitty-gritty about what are the exact things that I need to be doing in order to achieve my goals. And I'm really, really, really trying to whittle down my life a bit in terms of doing the things that are going to move the needle, doing the things that are going to get me closer to where I want to be, and stop doing some of busy work that I do. I'm very, very bad for being busy as a way of procrastinating, or just doing things that I'm comfortable with but that aren't really making a difference for me. And initially the podcast was not in that bucket, but I feel the further and further we go along, the more it is falling into that bucket. Had the podcast been a bit more successful up to this point, I think it would be a different story, but the fact is it's not. It's still very much just a hobby and something that I've just kind of done because I enjoy it. So with all of that being said, I'm pretty sure you guys probably understand where I'm going with all of this. The podcast isn't part of my future Katrina vision. And because of that, I have decided to make this the last episode of the Strong in the Saddle podcast. I've really enjoyed doing this podcast. Whenever there's been a couple of times where I've done some extended breaks from the podcast, and anytime I've done that, I've definitely missed doing this whole process of coming up with the episode, doing the prep work for the episode, filming it, editing it, and then putting it out into the world. I very much enjoyed that process, but I'm really trying to be honest with myself about being very intentional with where I put my limited time and where I want to go moving forward, because I feel like I've been stagnant for a long time and I no longer want that. So I want to improve, and in order to improve, I need to put behind me some things that aren't helping me out. So with all that being said, this is the last episode, as I said, of the Strong in the Saddle podcast. If you are interested in still following along with me, I'm going to be continuing with the YouTube thing. My Instagram is still available. The feed of what I've released thus far is still going to be up. I'm not taking the feed down. So if you're wanting to go back in the archives and listen to older episodes, you can still definitely do that now and into the future, but there will no longer be there won't be any episodes that are getting actively released every single Monday like there has been. So I don't want to drag out this episode any further than that, because that's basically all there is to say. I've really enjoyed this chapter, but we're going to close it. And remember, it's always a good day to ride.